We'll call the meeting to order. All right, we'll call the meeting to order at 1:03. And then we'll do roll call. So we want to just go through and say if you're here or not. I'll start. Trina Feldman here. I don't have a list.
On this page.
Oh,
There you go.
Kurt Schwagert,
Here.
Tammy Beatty,
Here.
Aaron Smith's not here, Jennifer Strickland,
Absent.
and Brittany Vago.
Here.
And committee business, the TSP check-in.
Yep. And then we'll hand it over to the consultants.
Hi, everyone. Sorry. I think that it's been a little while since we've spoken with you all. So it's good to see you here, even if we're remote. So I just wanted to remind you of our goals for today of coming to speak with you. And that's really just to give you an update on the project activities and upcoming engagement opportunities. And then also to gather some information from you about the equity-centered transportation issues that have come up as part of the transportation system plan. So I believe John is going to share some information with you, and then we will have Kaylin talk about the public engagement opportunities, and then we will talk about some next steps. So that is what we have for you today. I guess any questions before we get started?
Nope, we're good. Thank you.
Okay, great. All right, take it away, John.
All right, hello again. I'm John Bosquet with DKS Associates and the project manager for the project. We're heading up the traffic analysis kind of portion of this as well. And on the agenda here, I guess I just wanted to kind of go over kind of a high-level overview of what we're finding in the latest technical memorandum that we put out, and it is on the city's website, and that is kind of our assessment of today's transportation system and maybe kind of what's working and where the gaps and needs are. And then also considering the growth that we're expecting to have over the next 20 years and how that might change some of that. So also, if you remember last time we talked, I think we had an early conversation about kind of important issues related to our project goals and objectives. So what kinds of things should we be considering when we kind of guide the project and evaluate outcomes? And so, we then took that through our stakeholder group and to city council, got feedback from both of those groups. The quote unquote final version of the project goals and objectives is also on the city's website. So you can see that there as well. So kind of the overview of this, and this is kind of a fairly high level overview of kind of what we're finding, because we are at the beginning of a pretty extensive public engagement process that Kaylin and Brandy are going to get into in the next agenda items, where we're going to be asking for more and more feedback on this. So this is largely kind of our assessment, just kind of looking at the transportation system, whatever data that we could find describing it. But really what we're trying to do here over this next month or so is pair that with what the community is telling us to complete that story. So I'll kind of share that with you as far as, a few of the things that we think might specifically relate to, folks in the community that maybe are historically, underrepresented or underserved. And I kind of like to hear any of your thoughts or observations on that as well. So as we kind of look at the transportation system, we kind of break it down by, excuse me, the major modes of travel. Typically it's walking, it's biking, it's using transit, and they say driving or moving freight. And Again, the walking and biking networks, those were looked at, and quite a few solutions to improving walking and biking in Estacada were already identified, I think back in 2018, if I have the date right, and that was part of the city's active transportation plan. So we were drawing from a lot of that information for that. Some of the key things that we were noting as far as the walking network goes is, sidewalk availability. In some areas of the town, it's fairly complete, in others, it's inconsistent or just missing. You do kind of see a trend, which, makes sense, where there, maybe some of the older neighborhoods are more likely to not have kind of good places to walk, complete sidewalks, whereas new neighborhoods, because the city's design standards have changed, they're required to put in all of those sidewalks. So you're far more likely to get them in those areas. Also, some of the streets can be more difficult to cross, especially the highway, but the busier streets. And so we've noted that there's a need for maybe some strategically located crossing improvements, whether that's, simple striping, or maybe, some more of the improvements that have like flashing beacons. I know we've got a couple of those in town already. Also, I mentioned the highway in particular is definitely a barrier. Some folks live on the south side of the highway. There's also a lot of recreational opportunities over there. And really, the signal of Broadway is the only kind of protected way to get across. So that is a barrier as well. And then obviously where you do have sidewalk, a lot of these sidewalks or curb ramps may not be ADA compliant. So even if they're there, they may still be difficult for people with mobility devices to use them. And a lot of the newer residential subdivisions, of course, with a lot of the growth happening kind of further north and further east, they're going to keep getting kind of further and further away from some of the popular destinations, whether that's, the transit line on Eagle Creek, or all of the kind of activities around the schools and the downtown and the recreation along the river, which is going to make walking more challenging, possibly less attractive for some folks. And then on biking, again, there's just not a lot of separate, biking facilities for people in the city. There's some bike lanes on the highway. I think some bike lanes for a short segment now on Eagle Creek. But most folks probably don't find the bike lanes on the highway terribly inviting. And so for the most part, if you're going to bike somewhere in the city, you're probably sharing the street with cars. Again, there's a lot of hilly topography, obviously, in Estacada, which can make biking more challenging for some people. And while there is bike parking available here and there, some folks have commented, like in the stakeholder group meeting we had, that there probably could be more than there is. So once you do bike somewhere, you need a place to put your bike. And then on the transit front, accessibility of some of the transit stops could be improved. So maybe the stops themselves, to make sure people aren't, standing in a ditch or maybe in an uncomfortable spot, and that they can cross the street to get to those stops. Especially improving what we call the first last mile. So just their ability to walk or bike just to get to the stops in some areas could be improved. Could be a bigger issue in the future, again, as a lot of that new development we discussed kind of gets further away from the core transit corridor along Eagle Creek and Main Street. Frequency today, I mean, for Estacada, it's about 1 hour frequency, more or less. It's available most of the weekday and even a lot of the weekend, which might not work at all times during commuting periods that may be inconvenient. I'll say, I live in Tualatin. I think your weekend service is better than mine. So it's not all bad. And then availability of the park and rides. There are a couple of park and ride locations, but they don't seem to be maybe widely used. So there's some thought that maybe in general, there might be more the city can do to make people aware of what transportation options are out there. We also did some assessment of crash data over the last 5 years, just kind of looking to see if there were any hotspots, major trends. In short, some things were kind of as you would expect. There's kind of the higher volume, higher speed streets like Eagle Creek or the highway, where you're going to see more crashes. Generally, what we were seeing, which is good, is that typically when crashes occur, they tend to be lower severity. So very few high severity crashes as far as injuries go. So that's good to see. And not a lot of crashes involving people walking or biking. And kind of one of the common trends we saw was it seemed like a majority of the crashes involved folks turning, especially maybe they didn't yield at a stop sign, meaning they may have been at a stop sign and kind of decided to pull out when maybe they shouldn't have, which could be an issue that gets worse in the future as we see kind of more growth and more congestion at some of those locations. And then just as far as traffic congestion goes, really today there's not a lot. There are a couple spots on the highway at Main Street, right, during the weekday afternoon. If you're trying to turn out of Main Street on the highway, that can take a little bit of time to do. And then also the intersection of Highway 211, 224, you can experience some delay. But overall today, not bad. That certainly changes in the future. Kind of the future growth projection is pretty significant. I'll throw out some numbers here. You can write them down as we go. But I'm sure you've all noticed there's been a fair amount of growth recently in Estacada. So over the next 20 years, and again, we're drawing from population research from Portland State University, the housing needs analysis that you've recently done, and recent economic opportunities analysis. So these are consistent with other planning work that's been done in the city. The population's projected to grow from about 5,000 currently to about 8,800, and we're looking out to about the year 2043. And that includes about 1,700 new households and about 700 new jobs. So quite a bit of growth. And a lot of that has actually already been approved. So as far as, sometimes we talk about the growth that's going to happen in a community that looks really big, and people sometimes think, is that really going to happen? Maybe it'll be way out there. Maybe we won't see it till 15, 20 years out. It actually looks like a lot of it is coming sooner than later. The city has already approved over 1,400 of those 1,700 households. I don't know what that means. Does that mean that the projection is actually going to be low and you're going to have more? Or does it just mean that it's all coming early, right, in this 20-year period? Of course, a lot of those are probably multi-phase developments, and it could take a decade or more to build them out, right? It's going to be market driven. But one thing is for sure is it does look like that growth is coming. So obviously that's gonna, as the growth, and a lot of that's going to be continue to go north and east, which is a lot of kind of where the vacant land is. We've mentioned some of those challenges of making sure connect folks in those neighborhoods to the places they need to go, to continue to make the city walkable and bikeable, to hope get people to be able to access transit. From a congestion standpoint, obviously there's a lot of stop signs and places where there aren't any turn lanes, so there'll be more congestion pressure obviously from that. The highway will take the most of that burden, probably, with a lot of people in the commuting period trying to go or come from the north to get back into those neighborhoods to the east. So kind of a significant change there, probably on Eagle Creek and the highway in particular, with traffic congestion. And overall, some of the things that we were noting, and if you got a chance to look at the tech memo for the transportation systems and gaps, there was a section starting on page 32 where we were kind of reflecting on everything that we were seeing, and at least through the objectives that we had related to equity, and what might be aligning with that, or maybe issues. One was the need for safer street crossings has been identified several times, especially along the highway. Current conditions can be particularly challenging for the elderly and people with disabilities, and can be a barrier in access or for access to resources and essential destinations. Much of the transportation system is old, meaning it was designed according to outdated standards that are not compliant with today's accessibility requirements, or it's in need of repair. Sidewalks can be too narrow or broken or obstructed, may not be usable for some community members. Similarly, a lack of curb ramps that are not properly constructed also limit access. The aging population may point to a growing need for transportation assistance for people with mobility challenges. There is one corridor in the city where people can access the transit system, but much of the new development is occurring farther and farther away from it, and may even eventually be beyond the 3/4 mile reach of dial-a-ride and lift services. Furthermore, issues like the hilly terrain and poor street connectivity that lengthen travel distances can make accessing transit in some areas more challenging, which could point to the need for solutions that improve first and last mile access to transit. Even if the existing dial-a-ride and lift services, or even with those, there may still be unmet demand for transportation assistance for elderly and disabled residents in and around the city. Improvements could be made at some transit stops to make them more accessible and ADA compliant. We know that given the size of Estacada, it could be very accessible via bike, but the lack of dedicated and comfortable bikeways and just hilly terrain could be a barrier. Older neighborhoods often have sidewalks that are in poor condition or none at all, while the new neighborhoods have complete systems that are designed to current standards. And safe routes to school action plans that identified gaps in the past and safety issues in the walking and biking networks that present barriers for walking and biking to schools. So again, that was kind of drawing from not only our observations, I think conversations that we've had with you, with our stakeholder group. And I know the city had met with some folks in the community with disabilities prior to us documenting this, and we were drawing from that input as well. With that, I can turn this to Brandy to facilitate the conversation. I think the question on the agenda was, are you hearing something that was missing from that?
Yeah, I've got a question for you.
Yeah.
With you talked about crosswalks in town. I already know what my answer is to this. I want to see how many you guys are gonna talk about. What about talking in more of, or putting in more of the visible crosswalks like up at the high school? Because I know there's one corner here in town. I think it was probably one of the first 3 meetings I brought up in this meeting that we needed to address. And I still don't know. I get stuff takes a long time in government. I get that. But I want to know if it's on your guys' list.
Which corner is that?
The crosswalk at 3rd and Main that goes from 300 Main from the care facility across. And the reason that I say that, this time of year, it's starting to get darker earlier, right? We're going to start getting the rain and people are going to be coming down that hill 6:30 at night, and people are going to be trying to walk across that street to go get groceries. And even though there's a light that's above that, you can't see anybody when it's raining.
Mhm.
And
I can address this one because that's going to be part of the project because we're doing Main Street updates. So that has been feedback we've received consistently through the Main Street update process. And so that area crosswalk there and then 4th and Main are areas that the council is looking at, and that will be addressed in the Main Street updates that are probably going to happen early next spring. So that's sooner than the TSP.
So Kurt, I did bring that up because of, you
Right.
saying it, and then a couple other people that I've spoken to, resident at 300 Main also. And I also requested that the crosswalk at the base of the hill, when you're coming downhill, that first side be
Right.
closed. So that people don't try to cross there, make it more inviting for them to cross on the other side, to give the people coming down the hill more time to react.
gotcha. So instead of being on the uphill side, it would be on the downhill, so
Yeah,
they're
on the
not trying to
flat side.
cross that median as well.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I can see why
Great.
they would want to cross there though, because then it's straight across to Harvest Market. If you make them cross the street, then they have to cross
Yeah,
the street,
I-
go across.
I know, it just,
So
you know.
That might be
wintertime-
hard to get them not to do that.
But wintertime, it's
impossible
so
to see
scary
'em.
coming down that hill, so.
I
just-
totally
made-
agree.
I made that point and I just wanted to.
Yeah, I agree with you. I just think it's gonna be really hard, especially people that, it's
Yeah.
harder for them to walk. Now we're making them walk.
Three
Yeah,
Three
so
more.
They live in 300 Main. Now they've got to cross the street.
times. to
They've
get
got
to
to
Harvard.
Three
cross
times.
and cross again.
Yeah.
Well, I would keep looking at it. I had a comment, on a lot of the construction we have on like the corner right out here. When they're not doing the construction, they're not doing anything to make it ADA compliant. And so we have people in wheelchairs and that are visually impaired that are having a huge issue with it. I'm not sure why they can't, as they're doing the construction, when like it's a weekend and there's no one there, put down some plywood or
Yeah.
something, so it's easier for wheelchairs and stuff. Is that something as the TSP, can we make sure that all future construction is looking out for people that are, I mean, can you imagine being blind and not knowing that's there? And then trying to navigate through that? That would be a nightmare. At least if we could put down some like plywood or something. I don't know. That was a thought.
Yeah,
Um,
and just a clarifying question. If I understand you right, you're specifically talking about like work zones during construction?
Right,
Okay,
yeah,
Actually, work zones during non-working periods. It's like on the weekends here.
Right.
If they leave all that stuff flagged up and it's a nice sunny weekend and everybody wants to go up and head up river, you've got 4 times as much traffic, but you still got that area blocked off. And then where do people go? Because that's the only crosswalk to, as far as I know, that's lit where you can get across the street.
no, this
So
is
now
a
you-
different one.
Now there's another marked crosswalk that you can. push
That
aside.
one's not marked, that one down there is.
Right, but you're blowing people 2 blocks out of their way
Right.
now, and if they're disabled or can't see.
Right.
That could be super. Super bad, to say
Yeah.
at least.
Yeah.
Another, have we done any studies? You know how they do those, I don't know what they're called. In the olden days, when you used to go into the gas station, you'd go over that little bumpy
Oh.
thing and it'd go ding.
Yeah, the counter.
Yeah, the counter. Have we done any of those to see where would be the best place to put in lights or whatever? Measuring the traffic flow of anything?
John, what are you doing?
yeah, we have count information at kind of more of the major intersections. That would give us an idea of, yeah, what areas are probably where you're getting enough traffic to kind of justify putting a signal in.
So we have been doing those?
We did some just for this study, and I think it was something like, I don't know, 12 or 14 different intersections around the city. Probably half of those were on the highway because that's where most of the volume of traffic really is.
Yeah.
My
And just-
guess, oh, go ahead, Brandy.
Oh, I was gonna say, just to clarify that's for cars. I know you were talking about pedestrians right before this, but
Right, different
Just-
one.
okay, just wanted to confirm.
Yeah, different.
Yeah, my guess is because it usually takes a fair amount, a pretty significant amount of traffic on it's kind of the lower volume streets to justify the cost and kind of the delay to traffic on the busier street to put a signal in is you're more likely there's probably going to be a few strategic locations on the highway where it's going to make sense. And then possibly maybe some on Eagle Creek, especially kind of further to the north, kind of with all that development coming in.
Right.
My guess would be less likely elsewhere. We did also on that note get a comment during the stakeholder group, or a question, I should say, asking if we'll consider roundabouts in addition to traffic signals. And just to be clear, we said, yes, both of those are on the table and kind of should be considered at the same time.
did we look at like right here when you come down the hill, going across, putting in like a stop, just a stop sign and coming down Main Street? Do we look at something like that? Because with the new houses up there on Reagan coming down, you get a lot more traffic.
Again, that's all stuff that we're working on in the Main Street project. That'll happen before this.
So you're gonna put a stop in there?
Well, that's stuff that we're talking about.
Oh,
That's Stuff
okay.
that we're definitely looking at.
Okay.
During the Main Street project, so.
Okay.
Yeah, kind of on that note, we haven't gotten deep into looking at specific solutions yet. We're kind of still gathering the input on where we need to look. But that was another comment that came up during the stakeholder group was, you know, in those places where maybe the traffic signal won't make sense, should we be looking at more all-way stops to kind of slow traffic down?
When you say traffic signal, are you talking flashing yellow lights or you? Okay,
No, I'm referring to like at Broadway and the highway, right? So red, yellow, green lights.
I would like to see just more stop signs.
Okay, great.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So how, and maybe this doesn't apply to your committee. I don't know actually who to ask this question to, but you said over 20 years, the population would be increasing quite a bit. At what point does the city extend its boundaries? I mean, does that happen every 5 years? Does that happen every 10 years? And does the council do that? Who does that?
I
Sorry.
can address that.
Sorry.
So our UGB is set and we probably won't be extending our urban growth boundary anytime soon because we have more than enough land to handle all that expansion. Now, when property gets inside the city limits, the property owner will request that that be annexed into the city and they'll have to file a land use application, which goes through the planning commission and then council.
Okay, so the 8,400 is already in that boundary.
It's within the
currently.
urban growth boundary.
Okay.
Yes.
Great question. Any other questions?
Have one
Well,
more.
Brandy, I don't think you got to give your segue into your portion of collecting feedback.
Yeah. And Kaylin will actually give that presentation, but just any other questions maybe about what John has spoken about?
I have one more. You talked about bike routes. Have you looked at like making a bike route that goes to a destination? Like, it would be cool to have so you can bike from like Campanella area down and then across over into Timber Park or something like that. And then they're talking about revitalizing Lakeshore and making that really have it all connected. So like doing bike routes like that instead of driving down the highway, you know, something local bike routes.
Right,
Yeah.
some options.
Yeah, there are. And that's something, again, I'll refer back to the active transportation plan that was done a few years ago, which actually has been adopted. So technically it's already part of your TSP. I know a lot of people don't remember, maybe they weren't around or didn't see it was in there. We did through that. There's kind of some maps in there showing, we were looking for not only ways or key routes to connect the city for different reasons, whether it's connecting key destinations, whether it's, jobs, housing, places to get your groceries, things like that, but also recreational opportunities. And so we do have quite a few routes like the ones you're describing identified in there that we want to pull through and kind of retain for this plan. And that kind of highlights, I think during the last meeting we had, we're thinking it'd probably be good for us to bring those ideas back through this community workshop. Because I get a lot of the same questions are coming up about walking and biking. They're actually things that we've already looked at and addressed through that plan. So it'd be good to remind people of things that we have kind of done and looked at and recommended.
Did you have something?
Yeah, I have a question. John, have you guys met with our Parks and Rec committee? Because they're working on trying to connect all of Estacada through walking and bike paths also. They're working to assure that in all the new developments, there are connections to existing developments so that somebody can go, walk or bike through all of the through the whole town of Estacada, you know, through these connections. So if you guys haven't connected with our Parks and Rec committee, that would probably be a very good idea.
Yeah, thanks. No, that's on our list when we pivot to solutions. They're represented on our stakeholder group. And I think it was in the first meeting, they mentioned some of that work that they're doing and how we should kind of partner, because one of the things they mentioned specifically was they want to identify some off-street trails to get all the way from the north end of the city to the south, which is definitely something that we want to kind of partner with and incorporate in our work.
Great. Any last thoughts before we move to Kaylin to talk about public engagement?
One little
Yeah.
point, figure 15, the posted speed limits. I don't know when this is from, but the speed limit on Eagle Creek is inaccurate. It shows 55, but the whole stretch changed to 45. But
Right.
most people still drive 55 or more.
Yeah,
All right, thank you.
great. Okay, Kaylin.
Randy, thanks, John. So I want to spend this latter half of the meeting kind of talking a little bit about what we've done related to public involvement since the last time we spoke with you, and in particular about what's coming next, about this upcoming workshop. It's our first real big touch point with the public. And that workshop is going to be focused on sharing some of the information that John has shared with you, and then gathering feedback to inform our understanding of what the challenges are that are facing Estacada today. It's as you mentioned a couple of times, we're not really talking about solutions quite yet. We're gathering feedback on that, but we want to keep this focus on just making sure that we have an accurate picture of what the real challenges are for people. So as I go through these things, I'm looking for you to think about gaps, things that we might have missed and things we may want to consider, people we might want to be talking to as we approach this next round of outreach. So the last time we spoke to you, you were helping us lay the groundwork for our public involvement outreach plan, our stakeholder involvement plan. I think that was shared with your group. And just as a reminder, that's basically it's an overview of the key messages that we've heard, public concerns related to transportation that we're already aware of. We shared a demographic profile, community profile with you, trying to understand, what the statistical, the census-based understanding of Estacada is, and trying to see whether there are other groups that maybe we need to be thinking about outside of the people who were recorded on paper. And then also the types of tools that we're going to be using for reaching out to those groups. And as part of your feedback from this committee, we made sure that public engagement document was much more explicit about including a focus on underrepresented and transportation disadvantaged groups. And we included some parts of your equity lens in that document. And we're really looking at those as a series of questions that we ask ourselves and we apply to our work process as we interact with the data and with each other. And part of that is having this ongoing committee where we're asking you for feedback and making sure that we're on the right track. And that public engagement document, it is a living document, and it will change, as we discover whether or not some of these tools are working properly. So in addition to creating that document, we also the website was launched at cityofestacada.org/TSP. And that provides an overview of the project schedule, links to event information as it comes up. People have the opportunity to sign up for the project mailing list, which we're going to be putting into effect really soon here as we start sending out notifications. And recently, too, it's provided opportunities for residents to submit photos of transportation issues, I believe, and to just provide some feedback about the types of challenges. It's sort of on a rolling basis to help us give us some information and to inform this first event. And that was connected with the some youth outreach that we wanted to try and do. And I'll try and share my screen here. I'm not sure whether this was sent out to you. Oh, I'm disabled. My screen is screen sharing is disabled. Maybe I can get that, but it may have been sent to the group in advance. Let's see, is it there? Yeah, there we go. Let's see, I actually want to share this one here. So we put together this flyer. It was intended as something that would be a little bit graphic, a little bit more fun. It's an opportunity. It's kind of a conversation starter for getting young people talking about some of the challenges that face them in the city. We understand that the youngest stakeholders are frequently overlooked, but they're very much on the hook for any of the decisions we make. And so we came up with a list of questions where we're trying to get people to ask themselves about the challenges that they face related to getting where they need to go and safety, but then also trying to get them to think more broadly about bigger questions of who, what the needs are of other people in the community, and just recognizing that a TSP has to address many, a wide range of needs all at once. And we didn't want we didn't want to talk down to people, wanted these to be questions that adults could possibly find useful as conversation starters too. So the idea is that this would be distributed to different groups to talk about. Would love for this committee to take copies of it and share it and talk about it around the dinner table or any place else they want. And then scan the QR code and give us a summary of what you talk about, what your conversation was about. And I think there was actually a recent conversation. Let's see, how do I turn this off here? I believe there was a conversation that happened last Friday. I don't know, does the city have, did we hear anything about how the ant farm conversation went?
Do you want to cover that, Mara?
Sure. Yeah, so we did have the youth workshop last Friday. Young folks had a lot of activities that day, so they were kind of trickling in at different times. So really the main part of that workshop were some maps that we had laid out, and we had asked them to look at 3 different things. What's not working? What are some of the things that, they might be struggling with in their transportation experiences around town? Another map for what are the things that are working really well. And then kind of future thinking, what would they like to see in the future for Estacada with transportation? That included public transportation, active transportation, walking, biking, all of the things, cars. So we got really good feedback from them just having conversation, but then also on the map directly to record those ideas, just labeling notes. And so those were the big things we left behind, surveys and the flyer that Kaylin just showed us as well, and hope that Ant Farm will continue sharing those in the schools. But yes, that's really what happened last Friday.
And as part of that, I think the city prepared a couple of different flyers, I think bilingual, both Spanish and English, talking about that event, and then also the upcoming workshop on the 25th, which I'm going to talk about now. Any questions about what else we did to date? Those were some of the more recent things.
Do you know about how many youth participated in that on Friday?
Yeah, so I mean, they were kind of coming and going at different times, but I think it's safe to say,
I'd say about 12
yeah.
total, 10 to 12.
And were they high school or a mix of middle and high school?
It's mostly high school.
There were middle schoolers as well, and we had folks who live in Estacada as well as surrounding areas.
Thank you.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, all this is kind of getting ready for this workshop that we're going to have on October 25th. It's 5:30 at City Hall. And the purpose again is to share what, a little bit more information about what John shared with everyone here today, but also this is the first opportunity for the public to really reflect on some of the project goals. And we want to make sure that we have a clear understanding of what the challenges are that they face with getting around Estacada today, so that they really feel an affinity for what this plan is about. They feel ownership of it. It's going to be a drop-in style open house for the first and last half hour. We do have we're planning on a short presentation that John is going to give. It'll be in the council chambers there. all of the information that's going to be part of that presentation is going to be streamed on Zoom for people who want to watch it at home. They don't want to attend or aren't able to attend. But in person during those the open house portion of the event, it will just be an opportunity for people to can come sign in, look at different displays that'll have information about the goals of the project, some background information about what a TSP is, why it's why you need to have one, and then the meat of the content will be the opportunity for people to look at maps where we and maps and key takeaways that talk about the elements that John mentioned: roadway, walking, biking, transit, and they'll be able to provide their own comments about where they see deficiencies, where they feel like there's a need for safety interventions, that sort of thing. And they'll be able to leave notes on those displays, and so we can kind of come away with an understanding of what people's understanding of their city is. There will also be a comment form that people can use, and they can submit if they'd like to do that too. That comment form will be asking people about those goals and objectives and saying, are we on the right track? Are these the right goals for guiding the TSP process? And also, since those goals and objectives are going to be used later on to help form some criteria for choosing project, we want to kind of get an understanding and buy off from the community about whether or not those are pointing us in the right direction. And then for each one of the different parts of the system, roadway, biking, walking, and transit, we're going to ask people to weigh in about how satisfied they are or how safe they feel, using those parts of the transportation system, and then what kind of barriers really get in the way of them, using those either safely or efficiently. And then at the conclusion of that comment form, we will ask some questions to kind of understand who people are, where they're coming from, how far they travel each day, and then some questions about age, race, income, and education, so that we can compare it to our community profile and really try and identify, are we missing anybody? Who do we need to do outreach to make sure that we're getting their feedback? Yeah. Any questions about the general structure of that event?
I have a question.
Hmm?
So is this considered one of the workshops that you presented last time about?
I'm not sure which last time.
Well,
you mean.
there was, I was watching it online. It was, you had like 3 different workshops that you were going to be doing. Is this considered one of those workshops to get community feedback?
I think we only have 2 planned as part of the project, but yes, this
okay.
is going to be one of them. Yeah.
So then
Is that Tammy speaking?
yeah.
Hi, Tammy.
Sorry. Hi.
There's the flyer that the city sent out, the TSP, like the open house flyer on the second side has the calendaring with the dots that show when the different types of events are going to be happening during the process. It's really helpful.
Okay, yeah, that was something similar on the last meeting that I was looking at. So my question that I had while you were talking would be, are you planning to have at least one meeting with the folk at the Oddfellows home? Because I will tell you we just got done having our free dental clinic in Sandy, and it's been a struggle of mine to get people from the Oddfellows home to our clinic, although some of them come usually, but they have big transportation issues, that group that lives there. They don't have a bus and they're elderly. So for them to come all the way down here without transportation, I really think somebody needs to go to them.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things yet that I'll talk about, but that's really good feedback. So one question I have for everyone is, who are some of the groups that we should be connecting with as part of this? So one half of the in-person open house is we're also going to be doing an online version for people who aren't able to be there. Now, I'm not sure that that's necessarily going to be the best way to reach everybody, which is why we're doing in person, online. And then the city is also going to be doing some outreach to key stakeholders. And I'm not sure if the Oddfellows are on that group list, but that's a good recommendation for
Which
sure.
facility is that?
The Oddfellows home, it's out by the Shell station. It's a low-income housing, and they have quite a few people that live there. I don't
Is that
know.
at the corner of where Wade becomes 6?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. It's not what used to be an assisted living home. That is.
Oh, isn't it
No, that's the,
Victory Outreach
no, it's a teen, it's like an adult,
Transition Support Center?
yes, but it's actually behind that. So it's
Okay.
it's behind the Shell station.
Teen Challenge. So it's right behind Teen Challenge.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Great.
Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah. So we can definitely add them to our list of folks to think about doing outreach to. And so as I mentioned, there is also going to be this online open house, and it's intended for people who can't make that meeting in person. And it's going to be available through the project website for 3 weeks starting October 25th. And the idea is that it's going to have exactly the same content or mostly the same content and the same types of questions so that we can allow people to provide feedback even if they're not able to attend that night, or if that's not a convenient time for them. And so that'll have that survey component will also allow us to kind of have a real-time understanding of who's participating. And so we can kind of check in, partway through that period and determine whether or not we're not reaching certain demographics. Yeah, it was mentioned that the TSP fact sheet was available. This is one of the ways that we are trying to get the word out about this process. And so the idea is that the front of this could be used as a sort of a flyer, could be put up in a window, and it'll advertise that those open house details. There was, as mentioned, there was also the Ant Farm flyer or the youth engagement flyer available. And the city is going to be has been posting social media notes for a little while, and there's going to be a social media, some key questions put out to the community too over the next few weeks, and to through the online open house, encouraging people to click in and offer feedback. And as I mentioned, there were going to be those outreach to key stakeholders, of which the Oddfellows sound like they would probably be a good one. And so my question then is, hearing about that, are there other groups? Are there any other thoughts that you have about whether you get the word out, or questions that you have about the use of these tools and how accessible they are?
Flyers are great. They look great. There's a lot of words on them.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they've been run like through the Gunning Fog Index to see what the grade level of the vocabulary and structure that's being used is, but that's just one thing to sort of look at for accessibility. I know we've received sort of verbal permission from the school district to share city opportunities for engagement through the school district. So that might be one way to share out both of the flyers, or, if there's a really simple open house one that even like removes the fact sheet information, but just a really simplified invitation to the open house. And then just thinking about the Oddfellows home, which I've never heard of it referenced before. So thank you, Tammy. This is why you're here. Just another view on the residents of our community. Do we have any sort of catalog, anything of the multifamily living units in town, and whether or not there is a manager on site, like the type of person that posts, would typically have a place to post things, or community rooms or different spaces that might allow us to target getting some of this information out to those places?
I can speak to the first half about the flyers and the school district. So yes, we've definitely shared those with the school district and other folks on the stakeholder group list. So just wanted to speak to that. But the second part, I'm not sure.
Yeah,
So-
good consideration though, to see about multifamily housing units. I
I
heard
think-
someone start to say something.
Sorry, I do have another comment about Oddfellows. So I think it's great what you've thought through so far. I think this is great. I agree with Aaron that this is a pretty complicated flyer. It's beautiful, but it is a little wordy. And I think too that even though we're going to be doing this via Zoom, your open house, I still think that you're going to have people that will not know how to do that, or they don't have access to internet. There's a lot of old people that do not have access to internet. It's surprising to me, but it's very true.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And that's one of the reasons that we are, trying to do some targeted outreach to groups like that. It's certainly less, it's harder to get big groups of people to participate that way for sure. But yeah.
Is
Yeah.
there a way to partner with the library and they could help with the internet connection and do something like we're doing now? Going over a screen, and maybe they can partner with you guys. And so we have two locations where it's being shown.
It's interesting considering that the hills are one of the challenges. So if we had something at the top of the hill and something at the bottom of the hill, that,
Yep.
might demonstrate that we're taking our own concerns into action.
Yeah, definitely something to look into.
My other question was, is the city, when they post stuff and put it out there on like Facebook, that's the only one I'm on. You guys don't post it to like other groups. It's like your own posting. Can you not post it to other groups?
Depends on the group.
Because I think a lot of people don't see it because they're not following Estacada. So no one sees it. So if you post it in some of the other local groups, as many as you can, I think you'd get a lot more people seeing it.
Yeah, we're a government entity, and some of the groups, you need to be a person to join. So it would be great if somebody, either from the stakeholder group or one of the other committees, would be volunteer to share that information, because that would be the easiest way to get it into the other like Facebook groups and things.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I've
Are
been
there-
trying to do.
Yeah, that's great. And are there certain groups that you know of, either yourself or that seem popular that, maybe somebody is a member of and would feel comfortable sharing?
Sure. Yeah, like the Estacada Locals, I think is one of the big ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have any problem. I'll probably will take a picture of this and share it, or
Yeah.
whatever, find a link and share it if I can.
Yeah, and you should be able to like go to the city's
Good.
post and then just share that.
Right, yeah.
Yes, Trina's been doing a great job of sharing information.
Awesome.
I try,
you.
but
Yeah, no, it's appreciated because we know there are so many groups out there.
yeah.
Is the feedback form, did I miss this? Is it also available, just hard copy?
Yeah, we'll have that at the open house, and we can certainly make it available too at City Hall. Leave a stack of them there if people want to provide them that way too.
That's one of those things that possibly dropping off some of those with the fact sheet and to some of the multifamily housing, the larger complexes might be good.
And that's also something that would be good if we could get it at the library. Because there's I think the library gets a little bit more traffic than we do here at City Hall.
For sure.
Great. Are there other activities or other groups that we should reach out to? we've taken notes about the Odd Fellows, the libraries, or the
Uh, par-
library.
Like I said earlier, the Parks and Rec Committee would be a, you know, and I know you do have a rep on the stakeholder group, but, you know, reaching out to the Parks and Rec Committee, maybe attending one of their meetings might be a, you know, a good step for you guys.
Right.
Maybe putting a flyer up at the Mexican restaurant in Spanish. If we want to get some of our neighbors who are Spanish and Hispanic, Latino community. I know when I've tried to promote things, they are more than happy to help. So,
If you're not already reaching out to them, Todos Juntos.
yes.
And then the church, I can't remember the name of it. The Hispanic church up there would be another, I can't remember the name.
Where do they meet?
It's up on Wade, I think.
Oh,
Do you happen to have any contacts or?
I don't, I'm gonna try to come up with the name of the church and then I can get that to Elena.
That'd be great.
I have contacts for Todos Juntos.
Yeah,
They're on the stakeholder group already. We have
Oh,
representatives.
perfect.
But yeah,
Cool.
yeah, thanks.
Awesome. Any other groups or? Would it be,
Probably, but I really appreciate the approach you're taking. Like, let's like have a session, let's see who comes and then do that cross-checking with what we know is the broader membership of the community and seeing who is definitely not there and trying to focus in on those groups.
yeah. Wonderful.
I will say, if you think of anybody who we should be reaching out to after the meeting, you're welcome to email me later and we'll add it to our list.
Perfect. Okay, I think then we might just be ready to wrap up and tell you about some next steps. Is that great? Okay. So I think, you know, obviously we would love to see you all at the open house. Please, you know, thank you for everyone who's already distributing that information to different groups. We would, you know, it would be great if you could encourage others to attend as well and help spread the word. And then I'm wondering, John, if you can just touch briefly on what work is going to be happening before we come back to this group again.
Sure. So the next time we meet, it'll be sometime in the winter, later in the winter. And at that point, we'll have taken all the feedback that we get through this community outreach period and the work that we've done to date, and we'll present some draft solutions to talk with folks about. And again, if you go back and look at either of those schedules, those charts that show you the outreach during that period, we'll have again a meeting with our stakeholder group, this group, and our second community workshop, and likely a similar outreach effort, or maybe modified if we learn some things from this first time around. But that's what we'll be bringing next time. And I'll put in a plug for the city council briefing tonight at 6 o'clock right there in council chambers. So we'll be giving them an update similar to this and similar to what we did with the stakeholder group.
Great. Anything we missed, Kaylin?
Nope, I think so. Just feel free to you know, stay in touch with us, share it with your groups, share the Facebook and social media posts as you come across them. Just trying to make sure that we're hearing from a broad cross-section of people.
Great. Anything else from the city?
I would like to add a couple of things in terms of outreach efforts, just so everyone knows how else they can get involved, or if there are other people who have feedback, how they can also share that with us. There's a monthly e-newsletter that goes out, and we have about 40 people on that right now. So there's a sign up a link on the TSP webpage where they can go and subscribe. So that's another way that folks can get information and updates about upcoming meetings and workshops. Another thing as well is What's Up Estacada, which we're having in about a month. It'll be November 15th. This time we're trying a different time of day. So it'll be from 7:30 to 9 in the morning. And we'll see if we can get some more folks and different kinds of folks coming to that event as well. So just wanted to share that.
Great. Okay, and then we still have a couple things on the agenda because we have your council presentation coming up on 10/24. So think about between now and your next meeting, what you want to make sure to share with council of the work that you have been doing. And then we wanted to discuss potentially moving the meeting time. I don't know, Erin has a chance to talk about, because I know she wanted to add that to the agenda.
Yes, and I have to run to another meeting, but I just want to do a check-in with everyone to see if a different meeting time might work for everyone. Daytime has now gotten hard as I've returned to working in some at home, but now back at my other workplace and my daughter's school schedule and picking her up. So, and I think sometimes our meeting time is a little curious to people who are considering joining our group. And so I just want to, I might be putting together a doodle poll or something to try to gauge where people have availability. Because I think Jessica was the one that had the very specific schedule need, and she's not on the group anymore. So we can look at that again and see if there's a time that works better.
Can we also look at doing one meeting a month instead of two and just do workshops as needed? And maybe do a poll on that too?
Yeah, I think part of why we had that, I added the extra meeting a month is because we were really working on building your plan, building the goals. And you guys have knocked that out of the park. So you're doing great. So I think we could look at moving it down to one meeting a month.
I've got
Sounds like
one
that's
quick
it.
question. I've got one quick question for John. John, I know when you were giving your presentation at first, you were talking about the types of accidents and the severity of accidents. Do you have anything where it shows maybe more specifics, time of year, time of day, where those accidents are happening? So that way people can be like, all right, if we're having our accidents at 3 o'clock on a Wednesday afternoon at the corner of 4th and Main, I probably should be a little bit more aware, just as a, hey, here's where we're having the problem at. So that way you can be more informed about it.
Well, and that also leads you to say, like, is it related to school times when there's an increase in traffic for schools or athletic events? Or different, like if there's regularly occurring things or commute time in the morning, then it might help us look at different solutions related to those specific events.
Yeah, like lunchtime for the high schoolers.
Like every Friday night before a football game and after a football game.
Yeah,
It gets pretty crazy up there on
'Cause I
6.
mean, if it can be measured, it can be managed. And if we can, like having the flashing crosswalk lights going or something at those intersections at that specific time, it could potentially lower the risk of having an accident.
Yeah, we do have that information. If you get a look at the tech memo, like there's a map that we show that shows you where all the crashes occurred over that 5-year span. And we do have more information, than we have presented. One thing I'll say though is, you look at that map and there are, a few locations where you see, okay, like I'm seeing multiple crashes at this one intersection, right? But for the most part, there aren't a lot of locations where you see them all kind of stacked up on the spot. They're kind of spread around. So maybe like one crash happened in an intersection that you think has an issue. That said, do keep in mind that, all this is, these are crashes that happened. Oh, and that people actually reported also. right? Because that's, if somebody had a fender bender and they didn't report it to the DMV, it's not going to show up in here. That doesn't mean that there aren't safety issues at other locations where a crash didn't show up. An example would be, if I'm looking at my map right now, the intersection of Cemetery and Coupland, no crashes are on that map. And yet I've heard time and time again over the years about safety concerns there because of speeds and kind of limited sight distance with the curve. So, yeah, we do need to be aware that looking at actual crashes that happened and were reported, it's just kind of one piece of the safety assessment, risk factors and places that we know as a community where there are issues, whether it's parking on 6, right, when there's football games or school buses are parked there, things I've heard a lot of, they're not going to show up on the crash map.
And then this can be used as like a point in time baseline as the population skyrockets to be able to see with increased population, are there areas that are causing more challenges?
Wonderful. Well, thank you all so much for your time. I think that wraps up everything that we had. Unless there's anything else, just a big thank you. And we hope to see you all at the open house workshop. And so, yeah, thank you for giving us this feedback today.
Thank you,
Thank
guys.
you.
Thank you, guys. I'll see you at 6 o'clock tonight at the council meeting.
You got your cot ready? Just need to kick out here.
It's gonna be a long one.
All right. Take care, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, so you want to adjourn the meeting, Erin?
Yes, so we can, sorry, I was late. I was in a Zoom room. I went to the link on the meeting reminder that I get in Google. So with that, we can officially adjourn the meeting for today. Look for that doodle poll and we'll see you at the next meeting.
Sounds good. Thank you.